The emergency room was overflowing that night. The buzzing fluorescent. Lights flickered above rows of exhausted patients waiting for their names to be called. Nurses moved quickly between beds, their shoes squeaking against the polished hospital floor. Monitors beeped. Phones rang. Someone cried quietly in the corner. It was just another chaotic night. At the center of it all sat Nurse Elena Brooks, a woman known by everyone in the hospital for her calm voice and gentle hands. She had worked double shifts for years, caring for strangers like they were family. But tonight, she looked unusually tired. Her curly hair was tied into a loose bun that had begun to fall apart, strands slipping down her neck as she rushed between patients. Sweat dotted her forehead, but she kept moving. A child with a fever. An elderly man struggling to breathe. A mother worried about her son. She treated each one with patience. Across the room, Dr. Randall Pierce, the senior attending physician, stormed into the ER like a thundercloud. Everyone knew him. Brilliant, famous, and feared. He was the kind of doctor who saved lives but left emotional damage behind. His temper was legendary. Nurses whispered about him in break rooms. Some had even transferred departments just to avoid his shifts. Tonight, he was in one of his worst moods. Why is this place such a disaster? He snapped as he tossed his clipboard onto the desk. A young intern stammered nervously. "Sir, the ambulance just brought in." "I don't want excuses," Pierce interrupted coldly. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Elena. "Nurse Brooks." Elena turned calmly. "Yes, doctor." "Why hasn't room 6 been prepped yet?" "It has," she replied softly. "The patient needed oxygen first, so I—" Before she could finish, Pierce marched over. The entire room seemed to pause. Without warning, he grabbed a loose strand of Elena's hair that had fallen from her bun and yanked it sharply. "If you spent less time chatting and more time doing your job, maybe things would run properly around here," he said loudly. A shocked silence filled the ER. A young nurse gasped. A patient's mother covered her mouth. Elena froze. Not from pain, but from humiliation. Her eyes dropped to the floor. She didn't argue. She didn't shout. She simply whispered, "Yes, doctor." Pierce scoffed and walked away. But what he didn't realize, what no one realized, was that someone had just walked into the ER and seen everything. At the far end of the hallway stood a tall man in a dark coat. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fury, because the woman Dr. Pierce had just humiliated was the same woman who had once saved his life. And tonight, he had come to repay that debt. The tall man leaned silently against the wall near the hallway entrance, observing everything that had just happened. His name was Marcus Hale. Most people in the room had no idea who he was. To them, he looked like just another visitor waiting for news about a loved one. His dark coat was simple, his posture relaxed, and his expression unreadable. But Marcus was not an ordinary man. Years ago, he had been rushed into this very emergency room after a terrible car accident. His heart had nearly stopped. Doctors were busy. The ER had been overwhelmed. And the only person who refused to give up on him was Nurse Elena Brooks. For 3 hours she stayed beside him, refusing to leave even when others thought it was pointless. She spoke to him when he couldn't respond. She held his hand when the machines started to fail. She fought for him like he mattered. And somehow, he survived. Marcus had searched for her later to thank her, but Elena had simply smiled and said something he never forgot. "Saving people is my job. Seeing them live is my reward." After that day, Marcus never saw her again. Until tonight. When he walked into the ER minutes earlier, he had instantly recognized her. The same gentle voice. The same kind eyes. But what he saw next made his stomach twist. Dr. Pierce grabbing her hair, humiliating her in front of everyone. Marcus's jaw tightened. He didn't move immediately. Instead, he quietly observed the rest of the room. The nurses looked afraid. The interns avoided eye contact. Even patients seemed uncomfortable. This wasn't the first time Pierce had done something like this, and that realization made Marcus's anger burn deeper. He walked slowly toward the reception desk. The clerk looked up. "Can I help you?" Marcus nodded politely. "Yes," he said calmly. I'd like to speak with whoever runs this hospital. The clerk blinked. You mean administration? Yes. They're not available this late. Marcus reached into his coat and placed a simple card on the desk. The clerk looked down. Her eyes widened instantly. Her posture straightened. Sir, I didn't realize. That's all right, Marcus said gently. Just make the call. Within minutes, whispers began moving through the ER like electricity. Phones rang. Managers arrived. And suddenly, Dr. Randall Pierce was being summoned upstairs. He stormed past Elena again, clearly irritated. Unbelievable, he muttered. Elena watched him leave quietly, not understanding why the atmosphere had suddenly changed. But Marcus understood perfectly. Because tonight, the man who thought he was untouchable had just insulted the one person the hospital's new owner cared about most. Upstairs in the executive office, Dr. Randall Pierce paced impatiently. This better be important, he snapped. Across the desk sat 3 members of hospital administration. Their faces were tense. One of them cleared his throat. Dr. Pierce, we received a complaint regarding your behavior in the ER tonight. Pierce rolled his eyes. Oh, please. Let me guess. One of those overly sensitive nurses? No, the administrator replied carefully. This complaint came directly from Marcus Hale. Pierce froze. The name sounded familiar. Who? He asked. The room went silent. Then one administrator slowly turned his computer monitor toward him. On the screen was a news article. The headline read, Philanthropist Marcus Hale finalizes purchase of St. Matthew's Hospital. Pierce's face drained of color. You're kidding. The administrator shook his head. No. Doctor. Mr. Hale officially became the owner of this hospital 3 weeks ago. Pierce sank into the chair. Downstairs, Elena continued working as if nothing had happened. She cleaned equipment, checked on patients, and comforted families. She had long ago learned that arguing with Dr. Pierce only made things worse. So she simply focused on helping people. A few nurses whispered around her. Did you hear? Administration called Pierce upstairs. Really? Something big must have happened. Elena tried to ignore it, but a few minutes later, the elevator doors opened. Marcus Hale stepped out. He walked slowly through the ER until he reached her station. Elena Brooks. He asked gently. She looked up, slightly confused. Yes. Marcus smiled warmly. You probably don't remember me. She studied his face for a moment, then shook her head apologetically. I'm sorry. That's okay, he said. You met me on the worst night of my life. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Car accident. 7 years ago. You refused to leave my side. Elena's eyes widened. Marcus. He nodded. You saved my life. Emotion filled her expression instantly. Oh my goodness. I remember now. You were the patient with internal bleeding. We almost lost you. Marcus smiled softly. But you didn't give up. Elena shrugged humbly. That's what nurses do. Marcus glanced around the room. And people like you deserve respect. Before she could respond, the elevator doors opened again. Dr. Pierce stepped out. But this time, he looked very different. Gone was the arrogance. Gone was the anger. His face was pale. He walked directly toward Elena. The entire ER watched. And then something happened that no one expected. Dr. Randall Pierce, the most feared doctor in the hospital, lowered his head. I owe you an apology, Nurse Brooks. The room fell completely silent. Dr. Pierce stood stiffly in front of Elena, his pride visibly battling with the moment. I behaved inappropriately, he said quietly. Elena looked stunned. In all her years at the hospital, she had never heard him apologize to anyone. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way, he continued. And I certainly shouldn't have touched you. The staff nearby watched with wide eyes. Marcus stood silently behind them, arms folded. Pierce swallowed hard. I was wrong. Elena hesitated before answering. It's okay, doctor, she said gently. We are all tired tonight. But Marcus spoke for the first time since Pierce arrived. No, he said firmly. It's not okay. The room froze again. Marcus stepped forward. Exhaustion doesn't give someone the right to humiliate another human being. Pierce nodded slowly. You're right. Marcus looked around at the nurses. These people hold this hospital together. He gestured toward Elena, and some of them save lives without ever getting recognition. Elena felt her cheeks flush. Marcus turned back to Pierce. She once stayed beside my hospital bed for hours when everyone else thought I was gone. Pierce glanced at Elena with new respect. Marcus continued. And tonight I watched her treat every patient with kindness, even after you embarrassed her. The weight of those words hung heavily in the air. Finally, Pierce said something surprising. You're right about her. He turned fully toward Elena. I've worked here for 15 years. And the truth is, this ER runs because of nurses like you. Elena looked genuinely touched. Marcus nodded once. That's the kind of leadership this hospital needs. Pierce took a deep breath. You have my word. It won't happen again. The ER slowly returned to normal. Patients were treated. Monitors beeped again. Nurses moved quickly through the halls. But the atmosphere had changed. Something felt lighter. Dr. Pierce worked quietly for the rest of the night. And for the first time, he said please and thank you. Meanwhile, Elena continued, doing what she always did, caring for people without expecting anything in return. A few hours later, her shift finally ended. She grabbed her bag and headed toward the exit. Marcus was waiting near the doors. Heading home? He asked. She laughed softly. Yes. After 14 hours, I think I've earned some sleep. He nodded. I wanted to thank you again. You already did, she said. Marcus shook his head. Not properly. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a letter. Elena read it slowly. Her eyes widened. You're promoting me? She asked. Marcus smiled. Head of ER nursing. Elena was speechless. I can't accept this just because I helped you years ago. Marcus shook his head gently. You're not getting it because you helped me. He looked around the busy hospital. You're getting it because everyone here already trusts you. Elena felt tears fill her eyes. I just wanted to help people, she whispered. Marcus smiled warmly. And you did. He opened the hospital door for her. Sometimes kindness takes years to come back, he said. But when it does, it changes everything. Elena stepped outside into the early morning sunlight, holding the letter in her hands. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. And somewhere behind her, in a hospital filled with strangers and stories, a quiet act of compassion had finally come full circle.